Have you ever wondered why the snack aisle is filled with flashy bags of chips, all except for that tall, curious can? Pringles isn't your ordinary salty treat, and from the very start, it was never meant to fit the classic mold. The story begins with a chemist's bizarre determination to fix everything people disliked about potato chips. The grease, the messy crumbs, the half-empty bags. What emerged was a snack that defied classification, to the point that regulatory agencies had to step in just to figure out what they should be called. Yet, that's only the beginning. Behind the stylish cylinder and uniform saddle shape lies a tapestry of controversies, triumphs, and downright strange rumors. If you've ever popped open a can of Pringles and wondered how this peculiar snack conquered the globe, buckle up. You're about to uncover how a vision that started in a test lab ended up reshaping snack culture, and maybe even ended up as part of someone's last wish. It all started with a man named Fred Bohr, a chemist working at Procter & Gamble in the 1950s. At the time, potato chips were wildly popular, but came with a laundry list of complaints. They were often crushed into pieces at the bottom of the bag, coated fingers with oil, and left behind more air than snack. Fred Bohr thought there must be a better way. He was convinced that science could solve these potato chip crimes and transform a humble snack into something altogether different. Tinkering in the lab, he set out to create a product that would remain intact and fresh, no matter how roughly it was handled. He wanted crispness without excessive grease, as well as a container that could be stacked to the brim. No more wasted space. This was no small challenge. Traditional potato chips are thin slices of real, whole potatoes. That makes them naturally irregular, each one sporting its own lumps, bumps, and edges. Fred needed uniformity, but the only route to uniform shapes seemed to be a dough-like mixture, not slices. So he marched on with what many considered a downright peculiar idea. He would grind the potatoes into flakes and combine them with other ingredients to create a malleable dough. From there, he'd shape them into identical curves that could be piled up in a tall can. It was radical for its time. When coworkers teased him about making fake chips, Fred shrugged it off. He knew that if he succeeded, the snack world would never look at a bag of chips the same way again. However, success didn't come overnight. Early prototypes were either too brittle or too bland. Sometimes the dough was too thick and refused to hold the signature shape he had in mind. Other times it fried up greasy or starchy. Yet Fred refused to stop. Day by day, trial by trial, he nudged closer to an invention that would eventually outrun the entire potato chip industry in uniqueness. This was only the beginning of the Pringles saga. But no matter how meticulous Fred's approach was, the universe had even more surprises in store, ones that would put Pringles through legal battles and identity crises across the globe. Pringles first hit shelves in 1968 under the name Pringles Newfangled Potato Chips, an eye-catching title meant to highlight just how different they were from anything else on the market. They were neatly stacked in a canister and boasted that each crisp was identical in shape and flavor, solving the long-standing issues of broken pieces and stale scraps. It didn't take long for regulators to raise an eyebrow. In the United States, the Food and Drug Administration, FDA, had strict definitions for what could be labeled a potato chip. Traditional chips had to be made from raw potato slices, while Pringles used a blend of potato flakes, around 40%, plus corn flour, wheat starch, and other ingredients. As a result, the FDA insisted you can't call them potato chips if they're not made solely from sliced whole potatoes. By 1975, Procter & Gamble was forced to rebrand. The packaging changed from potato chips to potato crisps in the US. But the confusion didn't end there. In Britain, crisps were the standard word for what Americans call potato chips. Suddenly, calling this new product potato crisps in the US also made it sound exactly like the British version of normal potato chips. The lines were blurred, leading to comedic marketing challenges. Pringles was in a bind, but that bind only fueled curiosity. People wanted to taste for themselves the snack that had triggered so much debate over its very name. This was far from the last legal dispute. Years later, Pringles would be thrust into another classification controversy, but this time in the United Kingdom. This matter involved the value-added tax, VAT, essentially a tax that typically applies to potato chips, but might not apply to something that's not officially recognized as a chip. Pringles' unusual status triggered an intense courtroom back and forth as to whether Pringles should be taxed like a chip or treated as something else entirely. But that wasn't the only controversy swirling around in the near future. The real intrigue lies in how these uniform crisps come to life. Pringles aren't made the same way your standard bagged chip is. There's no slicing raw potatoes. Instead, the process begins with high-quality spuds that are washed, peeled, and cooked, eventually transformed into a form of dehydrated flakes. These flakes are then blended with various starches and flavor-enhancing elements like maltodextrin and emulsifiers. The resulting dough is flattened into a thin sheet, so thin that if you had a giant version, you could almost see light through it. One of the most mesmerizing parts of this transformation is the shaping step. The dough is stamped into oval pieces, which are then molded by a rolling mechanism that presses them into that signature saddle shape. Engineers call it a hyperbolic paraboloid. Fans just call it that perfect Pringles shape, and they can stack them up or fit them on their tongue in a silly mustache shape if they want. While the geometry might sound complex, the result is straightforward. It allows for maximum stackability. Next, the cut dough pieces land in a fryer for only a handful of seconds, sealing the crispiness while locking in flavor. Once they emerge from the oil, they take a quick ride under a blower that removes excess oil before gliding through a seasoning station. There, each crisp receives a uniform dusting of flavor, whether classic salted, sour cream and onion, barbecue, or more daring limited editions. It's no coincidence that the can feels absolutely stuffed with stacked crisps. The entire assembly line is designed to produce minimal waste and maximum stackability, reinforcing one of Fred Bohr's original goals: no more half-empty snack containers. The shapes, the quick fry, the seasoning, the careful stacking, everything is measured and tested to keep the product consistent. Quality control is notoriously strict. Some factories even do taste tests under special lighting so testers can't be biased by the crisp's appearance. One defective crisp can doom an entire batch. This meticulous process might feel a bit extreme, but it's part of what has kept fans coming back for decades. Still, not everyone was sold on the concept of engineered chips. Critics argued that they were too processed, questioning whether something that was only partly potato truly deserved to call itself a crisp at all. Yet consumers, smitten with the novelty, largely disagreed. Sales soared, and the marketing folks at Procter & Gamble had the perfect slogan to lure you in. In the 1990s, Pringles launched a catchy tagline: "Once you pop, you can't stop." It's one of the most memorable slogans in snack history, capitalizing on the delightful moment you pry off the plastic lid, peel back the foil seal, and hear that little pop. The phrase became a global earworm, instantly reminding people of Pringles' unique format. That tall can, topped with the iconic red lid, promised a sealed-in freshness that typical bagged chips just didn't deliver. Fans loved it, but the brand also faced some backlash. Detractors called Pringles the Frankenstein of chips, especially in an era when people started paying closer attention to food labels. Even the brand's own commercials highlighted the manufacturing differences, such as the uniform shape and neat stacking. Some health-conscious consumers bristled at the idea of a reconstituted potato product. Rumors flew about potentially odd ingredients or exotic chemical additives. Procter & Gamble refuted claims of any harmful substances, emphasizing that the formula was FDA-approved and thoroughly tested. Nonetheless, the controversy had an unexpected upside for Pringles: curiosity. People who'd never even tried them felt compelled to see if they were as different and as tasty as the commercials insisted. For every critic who dismissed Pringles as too artificial, there were plenty of snack lovers who raved that this revolution in a can was more consistent and far less greasy than standard chips. The brand used that friction to fuel interest, releasing new flavors that ranged from tangy and sweet to outright bizarre. During holidays, they launched seasonal varieties like cinnamon sugar or peppermint, both thrilling and perplexing longtime fans. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, the brand was preparing for an even bigger shift. Procter & Gamble, the corporate giant that had nurtured Pringles for decades, was looking at the possibility of selling the brand. Competitors were also stepping up their game, trying to replicate the canister approach. The once lonely tube in the snack aisle was about to face more competition and more global scrutiny. But that wasn't the only bombshell lurking in Pringles history. Perhaps one of the most bizarre stories associated with Pringles revolves around Fred Bohr himself. After spending years perfecting the can design, Fred reportedly became so attached to his creation that he requested part of his remains be interred in a Pringles can. Yes, you heard that right. The inventor loved his potato crisp concept enough to want his ashes placed in the packaging he designed. As legend goes, Fred Bohr passed away in 2008, and his family honored his wish, at least partially, by placing some of his ashes in an original flavor Pringles can and burying it. This tale has circulated online, sparking everything from affectionate tributes to comedic disbelief. Some critics say it's too bizarre to be real. Others argue it's precisely the kind of eccentric twist that's consistent with Fred's deep pride in his canister invention. So is it true? According to multiple sources and Fred Bohr's own family, the rumor is no mere myth. His children confirmed they made a quick stop to buy a can of original Pringles on the way to the funeral home, carefully placed part of his ashes inside, and sealed the can forever. If the story shocks you, well, it's precisely the kind of slice of weird history that makes the Pringles brand so intriguing. Fred's final wish cements the notion that innovation can become deeply personal. A snack design that literally went with him to the grave. Naturally, this story caught media attention and spurred endless commentary on social platforms. Some people found it charming and symbolic, while others thought it was downright macabre. Either way, it put Pringles back in the spotlight, reminding the world how passionate its inventor was about every aspect of that tall can. But the brand's journey didn't end there. Another major change was about to unfold, one involving new ownership and questions about whether that would alter the product's essence. In 2012, the Kellogg Company bought the Pringles brand from Procter & Gamble for nearly $2.7 billion, instantly making Kellogg the second-largest snack company in the world. At the time, some devoted fans worried that the change would affect their favorite crisps. Would new corporate policies change ingredients? Would there be cost-cutting measures that might ruin the carefully honed production process? The transition was relatively smooth, at least from the public's perspective. While the can design and flavors remained mostly the same, Kellogg seized the opportunity to push Pringles into even more international markets. Pop into a store in Japan and you might see wasabi mayo Pringles. In certain Middle Eastern countries, you'll find specialty spice blends. Take a trip to Mexico and you might run into chili or lime-infused crisps. The brand thrives on novelty, and Kellogg recognized that cultural customization could take Pringles to new heights. Nevertheless, new markets brought fresh challenges. Some countries had stricter health regulations, others had steep tariffs on processed snack foods. In each region, local customs and labeling requirements came into play. Remember the earlier debate over whether they're chips or crisps? Similar discussions popped up worldwide, forcing the brand to sometimes adopt creative labeling. Yet every bit of controversy only seemed to strengthen curiosity. People wanted to know, what's the big deal about this stackable snack that's not quite a potato chip, not quite anything else, yet arguably more well-traveled than most global snack competitors? By now, Pringles had become a cultural icon. Commercials were localized to each region. Celebrity endorsements cropped up, from sports figures to pop stars. Once you pop, you can't stop, morphed into numerous translations and reinterpretations. In some places, fans lined up to buy newly released flavors before they sold out, a phenomenon reminiscent of sneaker drops or limited edition sodas. But behind this frenzy was still that meticulously choreographed production line, churning out identically curved crisps that traveled thousands of miles to meet local tastes. Pringles had truly become a global phenomenon, and not even an identity crisis or a shift in ownership could slow it down. With fame, however, come more spotlights and more controversies. One of the most bizarre chapters in Pringles' history took place in the UK, where the debate over whether they were chips escalated into a legal matter over value-added tax, VAT. In Britain, potato-based snacks are often subject to VAT, but the law contains some nuances if a product wasn't strictly classified as a potato crisp. Pringles' formula, which includes only about 40% potato content, sparked an argument. Were they truly potato-based? Procter & Gamble, at the time, argued that Pringles were more like a snack made from dough and starch blends. They insisted that the shape, the packaging, and the fact that they're not made from 100% potato justified treating them differently. After a lengthy court battle, judges concluded that Pringles were indeed subject to the tax, dealing a financial blow. However, the episode was a goldmine of free publicity. Headlines blared about the snack that isn't a crisp and the chip that isn't fully a chip. The brand once again found itself in a curious gray area, fueling debates online and drawing new waves of curious snackers. Critics also honed in on the processing methods and nutritional content. Since Pringles are engineered from a dough, many skeptics claimed they were the ultimate junk food, a Frankenstein blend bearing little resemblance to actual potatoes. Health experts warned consumers about the high sodium content in many flavors. Meanwhile, fans continued to argue that you'll find similarly high sodium in plenty of other chips on the market. Pringles was merely an easy target because of its high profile and unusual manufacturing. Paradoxically, every time a new controversy erupted, sales ticked upward. Whether it was about legal classification or rumored new ingredients, people simply had to try these controversial crisps for themselves. Limited edition runs only fanned the flames. From cheeseburger flavors to even more outlandish experiments, the brand constantly tested consumer curiosity. But that wasn't the whole story. When you hold a can of Pringles in your hand, you're not just holding any old snack. You're holding the culmination of an obsessive quest by Fred Bohr to reimagine the simplest of treats, the common potato chip. It's a testament to how a single innovation, in this case, a tall, rigid canister and uniform saddle shape, can rewrite the rules of an entire industry. Yet this product that started with an almost futuristic concept in the 1960s has managed to stay relevant for more than half a century, thanks to constant reinvention and global marketing brilliance. What's particularly fascinating is the brand's ability to keep people talking. Whether through a viral rumor about its inventor's final wish, a tax court showdown that forced judges to dissect what potato-based really means, or the introduction of wild new flavors that teeter between delicious and bizarre, Pringles refuses to settle. Even corporate acquisitions haven't dulled its drive to expand into new corners of the globe. The snack's shape alone remains a topic of admiration and mild confusion. The hyperbolic paraboloid design ensures each crisp neatly stacks on the last, yet looks so different from any typical potato chip that first-time eaters aren't quite sure what they're in for. Is it a piece of pop art? Is it a crunchy science experiment? Perhaps a little of both, which is exactly why it still sparks so much conversation. And let's not forget the core promise that keeps fans loyal: consistency. You'll rarely find a broken Pringle or a half-empty can, unless shipping has gone horribly awry. It's that reliability, coupled with whimsical flavors, that has endeared Pringles to snack lovers young and old. Folks don't just eat them, they play with them, stacking them into towers, building duck lips, and seeing how many they can fit into a single bite without dropping crumbs everywhere. At the end of the day, Pringles is more than just a chip or a crisp or however you prefer to label it. It's living proof that an unconventional approach can catapult a product to iconic status. Fred Bohr's unwavering belief in a better potato snack paved the way for a legacy that, ironically, has made it something not entirely a potato chip at all. Even as snack trends come and go, Pringles stays. There's something unshakable about that tall can, the crisp pop of the seal, and the uniform shape that somehow fits the contour of your tongue perfectly. It's a product that sprang from one man's near obsession to fix everything he disliked about ordinary chips, and in the process, ended up creating a brand so distinctive that courts and regulators are still trying to nail down exactly what it is. But maybe that's the most intriguing part. Pringles refuses to be pinned down by traditional labels, whether it's chip or crisp. The shape is a mathematical oddity, but it works. The formula is part potato, part starch, yet the result is recognizable everywhere from Tokyo to Toronto. And the marketing, with its bright cylinder and catchphrases, proves that you don't need to follow the same blueprint the competition does. Sometimes, a dose of weirdness is exactly what the world wants. The next time you pop a lid and reach in for that first crisp, remember the wild journey it took to get there. Reflect on the decades of innovation, legal battles, marketing stunts, and personal passions that turned a humble potato into a global phenomenon. Ask yourself, does it really matter if it's called a chip or a crisp, or is it enough to simply enjoy the crunch and keep stacking? One thing's for sure, Pringles, in all its controversy and creativity, has left an indelible mark on snack history. And that may be the biggest twist of all, an ever-evolving, shape-shifting treat that somehow always feels timeless. So are you ready to pop that lid once again? Because once you do, it's hard to stop. And maybe, just maybe, that's the real magic behind Pringles, embracing the unexpected, one crunchy, saddle-shaped crisp at a time.